Hi, if you saw my first video, then welcome back to my channel. You probably already know a little bit about me and my life, but if this is your first time here, then welcome. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about my infertility journey and a little bit about our fostering journey, but it's not nearly as long. So let's get started in talking about our crazy journey for our prayers of having a family to one day be answered. So to start out, me and my husband Randy got married in June 2011. We talked about waiting a little while before we started a family. We actually started seriously talking about starting a family and trying in 2015, making a plan that we would start seriously talking about trying the first part of the year. And we wanted to give it, I believe it was 3 months for me to start taking prenatal vitamins. And Randy actually started taking vitamins as well. But for me to start taking prenatal vitamins 3 months before we were actually going to start trying. And so I started taking prenatal vitamins December 7th. So then 2016, fast forward a few months, and we actually started trying May 9th. So everybody always tells you, it can take a little while, try not to feel stressed about it. That's gonna, impede your being able to conceive and all of that. And yeah, to say that we were stressed, I mean, of course we are. I think I especially felt very stressed because this was something that I'd wanted for my whole life. Honestly, I always wanted to be a mom. We both felt that this was not going to be something that was going to happen. And I don't really know what was behind that, because our family hadn't really had issues with infertility, but it ended up that it was an issue. I say this a lot. I use this analogy a lot because to me it is so very accurate. To me, it just fits so perfectly. But for me, I felt like it was kind of like a unicorn. It's something fantastical and, amazing and wonderful, and that it just doesn't really feel real, which it's not a very good analogy, I realize, because unicorns aren't real, but I don't know, it's just one of those things that it just felt like that it wasn't gonna happen because it was something that I wanted so badly, and I'd wanted so badly for so long, and it just didn't seem like something that amazing and that miraculous would happen to me. I don't know, I guess it's kind of like one of those things like winning the lottery. It's like, it's fun to play, but you don't really think you're gonna win. I didn't want to believe it, but I just felt like in the back of my mind that this was not something that was going to come easily, and so I did feel the stress of that. As months went by, it definitely was something that, of course puts even more stress and even more pressure, because it's something that you want so badly and it's not happening. Going through this journey has definitely, and talking about it with other people who don't really, that they've never had problems with infertility or anything like that, it definitely has kind of shown me that people don't really know a lot about what exactly goes into having a baby, because I feel like that they tell you in health class or on TV, so many different things they want you to believe. They make you believe that if you have unprotected sex, you get pregnant. It's not really the case, because truthfully, it's there is a lot of timing involved, and there's a lot of factors into it. And so it was kind of one of those things that as months went by and it still wasn't happening, that we of course felt discouraged and frustrated, and I just didn't understand how so many people could get pregnant and we couldn't. And I think a lot of, and I feel like a lot of people who have been through this journey as well, they can fully relate, because I think that that's probably the number one thing that goes through everyone's mind when they go through infertility is, I don't understand how that somebody can get pregnant the first time they have sex. And, you know, there's so many people out there who, you know, the things that they tell you to stay away from, you know, don't do drugs, don't drink, don't do this, don't do that. That there's these people out there that they are doing those things and they get pregnant so easily. Why is it that me, who I don't ever drink, I've never smoked, I try my best to take care of myself, and it's not happening for us? It just didn't make sense to me, and it still doesn't make sense to me. I feel like that there is a time and a place for everything, and even though we can't really see it, and even though we can't understand it, and even though it doesn't happen in our time frame, and that's frustrating, and, you know, things don't always happen exactly the way we want them to. Things happen for a reason. That's what I want to believe. It's hard to actually believe that at times. Because yeah, there's definitely been a lot of times where it's been a journey. 2016, months are going by and we weren't getting pregnant. Around this time I started doing the basal body temps and doing ovulation tests. When we weren't getting pregnant, and I want to say that it was probably 6 months or over, we went and talked to a doctor friend and a nurse friend to just kind of get to get some advice, to see if they had any suggestions on what we could be doing that we weren't already. Taking advice from them and just kind of talking with them, basically they were like, you know, most fertility doctors aren't really going to talk to you until you've been trying for a year at least. Which we already knew that. And so at that point it was basically just a waiting game. It was basically just to, you know, keep trying and, you know, to keep moving forward and see where we were at in a year. Both of us, I think, knew that it wasn't going to happen in that year. So the year came and went, and it's 2017 now. We started in to see basically the groundwork to see if there was anything going on. I had some blood work done, and Randy had a semen analysis done. The results of my blood test, I feel like overall they were normal. I think the only thing that was a little bit abnormal or a red flag was something to do with my liver or my liver enzymes. And Randy's semen analysis, I believe basically was that he had a good volume, but the basically the overall look of the sperm was not right. They were a little bit abnormal. And so that was kind of, you know, a little bit of a concern. And then it was shortly thereafter that I also went to the gynecologist as well. She did recommend that we go see a fertility doctor, and she was going to kind of like prescribe us to go to this other doctor and set up an appointment for us. But at that time, we were so very, very nervous to really kind of commit to any kind of procedure or anything. And so at that point, we said, no, not right now. But honestly, hindsight is 2020, and I could kick myself for not telling her, yes, please do go on and, you know, send us to a fertility specialist that can help us. Because here we are almost 3 years later, and we're basically doing that anyway. So now it's 2018, 2 years after we started initially trying for a baby. We had found out about this doctor. This person came recommended to us, and so we were like, why not? We might as well check him out. So it was in June that we had our first doctor's appointment with her. And it was kind of just basically like sit down and talk. And we did bring in our results for Randy's semen analysis and also for my blood work. And basically for her to kind of look over, to kind of have a little bit of a head start of like, okay, this is what we're going to do. At that point, she recommended that based on our two tests, Randy's semen analysis and my blood test, she recommended that we go on something called menthol CPG, but we both started taking that. And then she also recommended me to start taking vitamin D3. I was supposed to, I think it was like in 3 months, come back and she would see if the vitamin D3 had helped to improve whatever she was looking for. That was 2018, and to be completely honest, after that doctor's appointment, pretty much everything stopped. For a few months after that, because I did have, she did also prescribe me progesterone, because at that time she kind of thought that I might have PCOS. She wasn't really sure, but she kind of thought maybe I did, because I did have some symptoms of it, but not very many. And so she recommended progesterone. And so I took that for at least a month, if not 2 months. And so for a few months after I did take the progesterone, we did still continue to take our vitamins, and I was still temping. The ovulation tests, I did still do those for a little while, but probably towards the end of 2018 until probably the entire year of 2019, we took a break. The whole thing was very overwhelming, very stressful. And I think, honestly, for me, I was so sick and tired of temping every single day, of taking an ovulation test, of doing all of these things every day, where it just felt like that I was kind of a prisoner to them. And I didn't want to do it anymore. And with no results, it was just, to me, it just felt completely useless. And so I stopped. I stopped taking my temperature. I stopped doing the ovulation tests. I stopped getting prenatal vitamins. Basically, whenever I took my last prenatal vitamin, I just said, okay, this is it. I'm not taking any more. Same way with the vitamin D3, same way with the menthol CPG. We just stopped. We stopped everything. It was like once everything was done, we stopped. And that was literally 2019. Maybe if we stop worrying about it, stop thinking about it constantly, stop thinking about all the things we're doing wrong, thinking of all the things that we should be doing, maybe some miracle will occur and maybe we'll get pregnant. And so 2019, we didn't do anything. So fast forward into 2020. In February, Randy and I started talking about becoming foster parents. And it, again, was definitely one of those things that it was very stressful. It was a very difficult decision because we knew it wasn't a guarantee. We could have children coming in and out of our house and not get to keep any of them. And we definitely knew that that was going to be very stressful, and it was definitely going to be very heart-wrenching. We really honestly weren't sure if we were going to be able to do it, but surprisingly, I think I kind of handled it better than Randy did, which I'll get into that a little bit later. We were actually on our way. We were going to go to, it was sort of like a class before the classes start, and so we were going to go and do that, and that was in March 2020, when everything changed. When we were going to go and do this kind of pre-class, we were kind of like, okay, are they still going to have this class? And we were told yes, they were, and if they weren't, then we would be in touch. It had been like all week, hadn't heard anything, and I believe it was like Thursday that we were supposed to go to this class. and we were actually on our way to go to this class. And I just happened to get on my email to find the address of this place, and what do you know, there's an email there saying that the class had been canceled because of the coronavirus. It was very disappointing, obviously, but it was just kind of one of those things. March turned into April, and April turned into May. We literally just didn't know what to do because there was nothing that we could do as long as the coronavirus was kind of going through and everything was shut down and in lockdown. We couldn't pursue the fostering. Truthfully, even if we would have wanted to go and do doctors, we couldn't have done that either. There was nothing we could do. And that was definitely a very, very hard time for me. I'm sure it was a hard time for my husband as well. But for me, it was definitely a very dark time, and I think that the coronavirus really it messed with a lot of people in a lot of different ways. For me, it definitely messed with me the most because we basically couldn't pursue the dream of having a child of our own as long as it was going on. And so we were basically stuck for quite a few months without being able to have any way of, having a child. And then finally things kind of started opening back up, and I called the children's division again, the person that I had been in contact with before, and she said their office was still kind of in lockdown. They weren't really allowing people in anymore, but she could kind of transfer us over to somebody else that could kind of help us continue with our fostering classes. So that was kind of where we started, and that was around June when we kind of started really getting in contact with different people to begin these fostering classes and just to kind of find out how it was all going to work, what we were going to have to do. And because of the coronavirus and everything, of course, everything was, you couldn't really go anywhere. They were going to have virtual classes. So we finally got in touch with this one office for Children's Division, and they told us that, this was kind of what they were doing right now because of the corona, and they were going to have classes, but it just kind of depended on how many people signed up for it, because it had to kind of be a certain number of people before they would actually have a class. I had been talking back and forth with several different ladies, emailing back and forth, and finally in July we were able to get a home visit scheduled. And it was a very exciting thing and also a very nervous thing. And she came in and we sat down and we talked. Honestly, I want to say it was probably for about 3 hours. And we finally were able to finish up, and she kind of left us with a list of things that we needed to do, different documents that we needed to have in order to kind of continue. And our first class was going to be a week from then, and we didn't necessarily have to have all of the paperwork done by then, but we did need to kind of be working on it, and we did need to have it, I want to say, within a month or two. We did have to have that paperwork ready to be turned in. So that was our home visit. I was concerned about fostering. There's, obviously a lot of concerns that kind of come from fostering. The big one being that you have children coming in and out of your home, and you're basically just a babysitter. Being a foster parent can have a lot of rewards. It's an absolutely amazing thing, and I completely applaud the people who are foster parents. I think they're absolutely amazing people. We learned a lot about fostering, even in the little bit of time that we were kind of going through the process. I absolutely am amazed by the people that have such good hearts that they take these children in and they are there for them no matter what they need. They're there for everything. I absolutely applaud those people, and they are amazing. For us, our end goal was to adopt a baby. And I knew that if we still weren't able to adopt, after probably even a year, I probably would have given up anyway. I probably would not have wanted to continue, because it would have just been too hard to have, babies coming in and out of our home and not being able to keep any of them. It would have just been really hard. Another thing about fostering is that, which obviously for good reason, they dig into a lot of stuff, and even though we by no means have anything to hide, it kind of almost leaves you feeling like you're not even your own person anymore. It's kind of like, you have these other people that are sort of watching over your shoulder all the time. It still kind of leaves you with a very uneasy feeling. We're pretty private people. We're homebodies. We enjoy being in our home. We don't really like go out and party. We don't really do, crazy things. Our most fun that we have is just kind of chilling on the couch. And to kind of have other people sort of involved in our lives, it was just not something that we were super excited about. So the week leading up to what would have been our first class for fostering was, kind of filled with a lot of dread, with a lot of excitement, and a lot of stress. I got off work and I sent Randy a message to let him know that I was off and I was headed home. And basically he said, when you get home, we need to talk. And of course that kind of made me nervous. So when I got home, I was like, do we want to eat really quick before the class, or do we want to have the class and then eat? What do we want to eat? What do we need to do and all this? And he was basically like, sit down. And I want to say our class was at 7. There was still a few hours before we had to get on for our class. But he told me to sit down, that we needed to talk. He told me that he really didn't want to go through with this. That he didn't think that he was going to be able to have children coming in and out of our home, and that not be, a very good possibility that we might not get to keep any of them. And he just didn't think that he was going to be able to do that. That he didn't think he was going to be strong enough to do that. Not only that, but also because of, kind of people watching you and just kind of going over everything with a fine-tooth comb, and just kind of not feeling like we were our own people anymore. He just really didn't want to do it. And he said that he wanted to see doctors, that he wanted to start trying to see doctors, and he wanted to go with fertility treatments. On one hand, I was very happy to hear him say this. On the other hand, I was very nervous, because we'd already gone through a lot in order to kind of get started with the fostering. And to kind of completely flip and start talking about fertility treatments and doctors, it just seemed like a major step back. I finally decided, yeah, okay, let's do it. Let's do the doctors. And we had a really long talk that night, and it basically ended, maybe a half hour before the class was supposed to start. And so I sent a message really quick saying that we were not going to be able to continue with the foster care classes. And kind of our first stop was back at the doctor that we had seen before. And going into it, it was not shell out money for everything, but basically if they recommend it, and assuming that it's not going to be so expensive that we can't pay for it in cash, we're going to do it. The last time she had recommended that Randy go on some injection shots. And on all the research that we had looked into it, it was kind of looking like it was basically going to be like $1,000 a shot. That was not something that we were willing to do, and we were hoping and praying that that was not going to be the case. So we went to the doctor. I called the doctor probably the next week. I think probably I called the next Monday or so. And told them, you know, that we were wanting to kind of get back into, you know, doctor's appointments to have a baby. And they actually, at that point, it was 2 months before they even had an opening. And it was definitely like something that I didn't want to wait on. I really wanted to just get in and do it. But unfortunately, if any of you guys are kind of going through infertility as well, you can fully understand that fertility is not something that just happens overnight. To have infertility treatments and everything is pretty much a month-by-month basis. It's literally like a small window every month. We decided to go on and start taking our vitamins again. My prenatal, Randy's vitamins, vitamin D3 and menthol CPG. We started taking pretty much immediately. And my thought was, okay, if I go on and start taking these things now, then by the time our appointment is, it'll basically be the same amount of time that they had said before to come and see them again after taking the vitamin D3. So I kind of thought I was getting ahead of the game and that it would be good. During the time while we were waiting for our doctor's appointment, we actually found out something that we're hoping will lead to us being able to adopt. So that's, you know, something that we're very excited about and we're still moving towards and we're still working on. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that right now. I'll probably, you know, make another video separately about that at a later time, probably after the baby is born or, you know, sometime later after I've got the birth family's permission and to kind of be able to tell a little bit about it. So I still probably won't go into a lot of detail about that because I still want to respect the other family's privacy, but I'll, you know, kind of tell you a little bit about what's going on. The end of September, September 23rd to be exact, we went back to the doctor, and it was kind of similar to the first time we went. We basically just kind of sat down and kind of went over everything, just kind of talked about our options, and she basically was like, you know, I assume that the reason that you're here again is because you want to kind of go through with this. Like, you don't necessarily want to beat around the bush. You want to, you know, start doing what needs to be done. We weren't willing to go through with everything. You know, we by no means wanted to break the bank in order for this to happen, but we were willing to, you know, start out with taking the fertility treatments, for Randy to start doing the injections, which at that point we still did not know how much they were, and we were not committing to those until we knew how much they were, because if they were $1,000 a shot, there was no way that was going to happen. But, you know, assuming that all of these things that they were recommending were within our budget, we were all for it. So that was kind of where we went, and she ended up prescribing me with progesterone again, and also a drug called letrozole, which is similar to Clomid, except it supposedly is not supposed to be quite as high of a risk for multiple births as Clomid. There still is a risk, but it's not as high as Clomid. So that was kind of where we went from there. And she also said, you know, as long as you're here, you know, we could also do a pap smear, and we could kind of, you know, see if there's anything that we could kind of find from that. But I decided, yeah, we're here, might as well do it. She also prescribed Randy to take what is called an HCG injection. So Randy actually started the injections on November 2nd. And the way they work is that they are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And you actually have to mix it. And then once it's mixed, it's only good for 28 days. So basically we would have to reorder these every month. And the doctor had recommended that we have basically a medicated 3 months, I believe was what she called it, where that I was on the progesterone and the letrozole for 3 months, and then Randy was taking the injections for 3 months. And then we would kind of like regroup and see, you know, if we weren't pregnant, then we would kind of see, you know, what our next step would be. And for me, I don't like going into things unknown. I like to be like 2-3 steps ahead. I like to know what's going to be happening after what's going to be happening next. Because again, we want to kind of make smart decisions. We want to know how much things are going to be. When we had been to the initial appointment in September, she had said something about me having a pelvic ultrasound. And at that point, I thought that it would be something that I would have an appointment with her and she would do it at a later date. But then, you know, a few months go by and she hadn't said anything more about it. So I wasn't sure if this was something that she had wanted me to do on my own, or if it was something that we were gonna, you know, that we just weren't at that stage yet. So I had sent an email asking about it, and she said for me to go on and have a pelvic ultrasound, and that they could have it set up through the hospital or through this other place that I didn't even know what it was. I assumed it was a clinic, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know where it was. I was kind of like, okay, well, just go on and have it through the hospital. I think it was like just a few days before the appointment to, I think, kind of get registered. And so in the process of this, the woman says that after insurance, our part of the payment of it would be $900. And I immediately froze and I said, what? You expect with fertility that things are going to be expensive. To me, I'm like, there's really not that much difference in that and a pap smear. So to me, I could not believe that it was that expensive. It was shocking to me. And to be completely honest, at this point, I still don't even understand why it was so expensive. Especially considering that when I told her, okay, no, cancel my appointment, please. I got back in touch with the doctor. Can you please set me up with the other one so I can find out how much they are? And so I had gotten on their website and I talked to them. And for them, it was $200 for not even a clinic. Like, honestly, whenever I actually found out what this place is, it's not even really technically a clinic. It's basically just an ultrasound place. For just an ultrasound place, it's $200, but for a big hospital, before insurance is almost $2,000 and after insurance is $1,000. We opted for the other place to have the pelvic ultrasound done. And so we went to this place and we'd never been there before, didn't even know it existed. But it was actually pretty cool. It's, you know, kind of one of those places where you can have 3D and 4D ultrasounds done. They also had where you can have like a DVD or a CD of the baby's heartbeat, or the baby's heartbeat put into like a stuffed animal. So it was a pretty cool place. And I myself had never had an ultrasound before. She did kind of like an ultrasound on top, and then she also did an internal ultrasound. And I'd never had either one of them done before. But it was definitely very bizarre. With the ultrasound on top, I had no idea how far I was supposed to pull my pants down. I feel like this is a moment for TMI. I won't get into too much detail, but I didn't know how far I was supposed to pull him down, and so I was kind of like, you know, kind of pulling him down, and I was like, you know, how far do I need to go? And she was like, oh, pretty far. And so I pulled them down, past my hips, and she proceeded to kind of start with the ultrasound. And I think she probably ended up telling me 3 times, you're gonna have to pull him down a little bit further. She got done with that and everything, and then she proceeded with the internal while she was like looking at my uterus and my ovaries. She was looking at my right ovary, and I could very like clearly tell, yes, that was where she was at. It did not hurt, but I could definitely like tell that, there was a pressure there. And then, she would go to the other side, and she would be on the left ovary, and I could definitely tell that, yes, she was on the left side. It was very bizarre, something I was not expecting with this appointment. And then also something that the doctor had told me before, I have a tilted uterus. And then on top of that, apparently, possibly, I also have an S-shaped uterus. It's another one of those things that I didn't know about myself, but they were able to kind of get what they needed from that, and they sent the results to the doctor, and she said that basically everything looked good. That she did see a few follicles on my ovaries, but other than that, everything looked normal. And the way she kind of explained it, the follicles are kind of an indication of me having PCOS. I think it's fairly minor. That's kind of what the doctor had told me before. And so again, I'm not really sure exactly what that's gonna mean for us. I asked the doctor, okay, so now what's kind of our next step? We've kind of gotten to our 3 medicated months almost, and so what's kind of our next step? And they asked if Randy had blood work done again, and I was like, no, nobody had even said that he needed to. They had said something about that it didn't really make sense to do another semen analysis until he had been on the injections, because there would probably be no difference. So it just didn't make sense to do it until he had been on the injections to kind of see if it helped him. But I guess like they want to do blood work and then maybe do the semen analysis. And then for me, they said that at this point, since I'm still currently taking progesterone and I'm taking the letrozole, that they want for me to do peak, and I'm probably totally going to screw this up, but peak plus days of my cycles, which basically means like a week after you get a temp spike or like a positive ovulation test. And then you go in and you have blood work done. And they basically just kind of check to see if you're ovulating. She said that she wanted to do that, and then the next step would be an IUI, intrauterine insemination. And kind of a part of me is like anxious for that, because I feel like that's a little bit more likely to be helpful for us. But at the same time, I feel like it's, it's still not a guarantee. It's obviously still not a guarantee, but I feel like that if they think that everything else that they're doing and we're doing, if everything looks good, I don't know why they would do an IUI if they didn't think that it would be successful. So to me, I kind of feel a little bit more optimistic about that. So kind of a part of me is like, yeah, let's do that. But at the same time, I'm like, how much is that going to be? Which kind of is the core root of all of our issues anymore. So that's basically essentially the infertility journey for us as of right now. I hope that it, kind of made you guys laugh every once in a while. And, if you guys have similar stories, I would love to hear about them. Hopefully we can, all kind of get through this together and support each other along the way. And if you have success stories, I'd love to hear those. If you have a similar situation, if you're just as clueless as I am and you're hoping to learn something, then hopefully we can help each other out. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.